pretty sketchy sketchy history there. I slept through one of my year 12 exams, so I failed my tertiary entrance exams, and so I ended up traveling, doing a bit of a gap year, and and I started with a diploma of commerce that shot me into my bachelor's of commerce. I majored in corporate law.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today I have a very exciting interview for you. Today I had the opportunity to interview Bridette McDowell. She is the CEO and founder of Cheeditha Energy, a company she founded with the local indigenous community in Western Australia. She was also mentioned in the Australian Financial Review as the top 5 women building powerhouse careers in the energy industry. Today, we discuss how Bridgette started her career, the challenges she faced, and how she ultimately overcame those challenges to innovate and create new products in the energy sector in Western Australia. So stay tuned for this exciting. So first of all, welcome Bridgette.
Thank you.
Bridgette, the way I start these interviews is to give us a little bit of a background about yourself, what you studied, where you studied, and just a quick run through of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. Pretty sketchy sketchy history there. I slept through one of my year 12 exams, so I failed my tertiary entrance exams, and so I ended up traveling, doing a bit of a gap year, and I started with a diploma of commerce that shot me into my bachelor's of commerce. I majored in corporate law, which I don't do now at all. And then I sort of fumbled my way. I came out of uni in my undergrad just as the economic downturn happened in WA with the mines, so I couldn't get a job at all. My brother was running a bit of an aircon company, so I just went and started helping him with admin and some document control. And I found I was getting so frustrated with how inefficient his business was, which he still runs very successfully, but he can only do it because that's how his brain works. And and how inefficient the industry was, so far behind. No one wanted to change anything. And it was really frustrating. And so I went and studied a master's of project management so that I could sort of have some authority behind wanting to fix these efficiency problems. And that led me into finding I found a really cool product, which is a natural refrigerant gas. And you can replace synthetic refrigerants with this gas. And it's so much more efficient and so much more planet friendly. And so I thought this is a no-brainer, particularly up north of WA where we use a lot of aircon. So I moved up there thinking I'll crank that business up, and I just couldn't get any buy-in. I mean, between being like a commerce student, and being a young woman, and also just people not understanding the product, I couldn't get any traction. And I was finding that people would say, oh, not really interested in that because I don't understand it, but can you do solar? And I thought, I can do solar, sure. No one else up in Karratha was doing solar at the time. And that led me to starting my first energy business. And I actually now have 7 across the state doing various things.
Right, that's very interesting. Now, can we just back up a little bit about all the way back to year 12? That was a very interesting story. So what happened that you slept in and you missed your final year 12 exams?
So I think I had 6. They're called TER, or they were called TER. They're called ATAR now, I think, in WA. And I had, I was average in all of them. And then the last one was meant to be my good one. It was drama or like something. And I slept I slept in and I missed it, and they wouldn't let me resit it. And so it brought my average so low that I couldn't qualify for any universities or for anything. So I had to rethink the plan.
That's super interesting, because I remember myself being in year 12, and all the students I speak to that are in year 12, They are freaking out about their year 12 grade. It's like the end of the world if you don't.
And it's so funny because and I felt it at the time. I just thought I'd ruined my whole life. And now I'm 32 and not a single person has asked to even see my university transcript. So it really doesn't, it's not the end of the world. And there's something like 115 routes to get into uni these days. So I try and tell, students that I speak to not, have a bit of fun. Don't put so much pressure on yourself.
Absolutely. And it's always easier if you get top marks in everything going straight in. I actually interviewed a doctor from Monash Health in Melbourne here, Monash, and he said, look, to get into med school, you've got to get top grades and all that. But if you don't get that, there's other avenues to get in as well. And the fact that you're mentioning there's like 150 other ways to get in, I don't want anyone to take the message to take away is don't study in year 12. Absolutely study and make sure you rock up to your exams, of course.
Can say that helps a lot.
Yeah. But if you do everything right and you're in just a bad circumstance, and a lot of kids are in bad circumstances in year 12, it might be family, it might be other pressures. It's not the end of the world, I think, is that message that we're trying to get through.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, if you can study really hard, get great grades and get in the way you want, then, that's perfect. But you're not going to fail in life if it doesn't all go to plan.
Absolutely. So you missed the exam, but you still got into a commerce degree. How did that eventuate?
So I managed to get in to a college here, which is sort of like a lower level to a university, sort of TAFE level. And I did a diploma of commerce. So all I had to do for that was prove that I had graduated from year 12.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually counted for my first year of my commerce degree. So when I completed that, I went straight into my second year. So I really didn't miss any time.
Yeah, exactly. That's a brilliant insight as well. And that was another thing with us when we were going through university. Not that I did this as well, but I didn't necessarily get into the university that I wanted to when I started off. But I found out, because I got into a university or into some course, the subjects that I would do, they would actually cross credit you for the university that I wanted to get into, and there'd be absolutely no difference. So the difference between, just to give people an example, in Victoria here we have something called an ATAR.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be an enter score back in my day when I was, when I had a bit more hair. But effectively, you could get into a course where the enter score back then was about 60, and you could get into a course by following that pathway into something which is going to give you where you need an enter score of about 80 or 90 without any change and without having subsequently the grades behind it as well. So of course you're going to pass, you've got to get good grades and all that sort of stuff. At some point you do have to excel, but it's not the end of the world.
And I think that, I still don't know what I want to do. And there's also a lot of pressure on that. And I think that, for me, commerce, I didn't think I wanted to be in business. I thought, originally I wanted to be a police officer. And my dad said, you have to go to university. I don't care if you then go and be a police officer, but you have to go to university. Okay. And I went and did commerce, and I started with a major of marketing and management. And I got about 2 weeks in, I just thought, this is awful. And I'm so bad at it because I'm not good at anything that doesn't have a correct answer, marketing doesn't really have a correct answer. It's someone's opinion. And I didn't like that. I said, what if I don't agree with your opinion? And so that's when I fell into law, and I found out I was really good at it. And never in my life, being a bit of a thug at school, did I think I would go and graduate law with 98%. And it was just because, I fell into it and I realized I loved it. And as soon as I found something I loved, I tried really hard because I wanted to be good at it. So it took me, I think I changed my major 6 times in the first year.
Right. It's interesting. You raise a very interesting point there as well. Like myself, I got into engineering, and I'm not an engineer now. I absolutely hated it. Like personally, I got in there, and it was a family tradition for me. Like everyone in my family has an engineering degree. No one's an engineer, so the irony of it. But I got in, found something I loved, and then sort of excelled in that. But you raise a very interesting point there as well. There's I was reading a book by a person called Ray Dalio, billionaire investor and biggest hedge fund in the world. But he actually mentions as well, when he was studying at school, rote learning was really bad for him. He hated it. He was never good at it, didn't like it, nothing about it. But then he discovered finance, fell in love with it, and his story obviously doesn't always just go up, but fell in love with it, ended up starting the world's biggest hedge fund. I think he went to Harvard. I'm not sure if it was Harvard or Princeton or something, but he went to one of the top tier universities, got his degree, and all because he just found something he loved. And that's a key point. I think you've mentioned. There's two key points that you've actually mentioned. You still don't know what you kind of want to do. I don't think anyone really ever kind of knows that. You've got to kind of work through life to get to that answer. And the second thing is find something you love. Find something you love and do it, and you'll actually excel at it. The fact that you were mentioning that you're a bit of a thug at school, and now you're studying law.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes such a difference. And because we're forced into things as students because of a curriculum. And then if we struggle with something, we think we're stupid. But the fact is, it's just not what we're meant to be doing long term.
Correct.
And that's okay. It's still really important to learn these things. And, I was having a bit of a laugh with my friends the other day, because when we were at school, and it was probably the same for you, teachers used to say in maths, you're not going to have a calculator in your pocket everywhere you go, so you have to learn these equations. And now we've all got phones, so we absolutely have calculators in our pocket. But that, there's things that we're learning in there that I still use every single day. And I hated maths, I hated science, and I am in 100% a STEM field now. So I still kind of hate those things in the traditional sense, but I need them every day. So it's I think you need to be learning all those things, but you're not stupid if it's not clicking.
Absolutely. And the other thing too is what the education system, in my personal opinion, fundamentally forgets is that everyone learns differently. So yes, 80% of people might learn if you just do rote learning and push it through them all the time. That all being said, there is 20% that doesn't work for. That's nothing to do with those students. I actually think the system fails those students fundamentally. And those students may necessarily excel in different areas at different stages of their lives as well. So just because you don't get something in high school or university, or even just working, we'll get onto your first couple of years of working as well. But it doesn't mean you're stupid. It may not be a thing. That could be a thing. You just don't love what you're doing. But the second thing is, you may not have been taught in a way that gels with you, and there will be an instance where that will come up and something will just click and you will just go to the moon on that as well.
Absolutely. And I do it with my staff. My staff now, and it's because I learned at uni how to study for me. And that was really important. I worked out I do really well with color coding my notes, and it allows me to sit and examine and remember that. And I explained to my staff, that a lot of my staff are doing traineeships and apprenticeships and stuff. And I said, just because you were taught a certain way to how to study or something like that, it may not suit you. I can't sit and read a book and take it in. I need to write notes. I'm not particularly good at listening and then trying to remember if I haven't taken notes. So you have to learn your way of studying. I think that is, and I always say that to my staff, and I'm like, you're not stupid just because, people are particularly hard on themselves when they, they think it should be easy and they struggle with that. And I'm like, no, you just haven't learnt your way of studying yet, and that's okay. So I think that, yeah, we just put so much pressure on ourselves, and it took me till my second year of uni to really know how I effectively study.
Right. And that's an interesting thing as well. During that, and this is that perseverance I'd love everyone to learn as well. It took you to your second year of uni to learn how you studied. So that means you had a year of hell of basically not learning how to study, and that process of doing something, not getting the result you want, but just keep doing it anyway. Just that persistence of going through in itself will teach you. There will be something that comes out of that. It's not like a situation where nothing will ever come out of that. You will eventually get to the other side of that, but you do have to push through it, and it is absolutely painful when, especially, we're social beings. Everyone's doing well. You're the one not getting through, and you're the one maybe putting in 20 times the effort that everyone else is, and you're just not getting the results. That is just a part of the process, and you'll be better off for it. But if you're going through that right now, just stick at it, is what I say to people.
Absolutely. I had to do accounting 103 times.
Yeah.
The first two times I got 49%. And then the third time I got 73 because it finally clicked, and I hated it. It was awful. But I use it every single day now. So,
Absolutely. And I'll give you the irony for me as well. In university, we had to learn programming. I hated it. I absolutely hated computer programming. There was nothing worse in my life. I actually now do it for a hobby. So The irony is you will flip on things you like and things you don't like. So those sort of learnings, and I think I can tell how it's giving me a bit of an insight on the way your business works as well. There is, because running my own business as well, that nothing ever really works as you've got an idea and you say, I want to do this, but how that actually eventuates could be 10 billion different configurations of what the actual outcome could be. So that persistence of going through is kind of that iterative process that you kind of need to go through as well. So just on that, so you've missed your exam, the world's ended, got into a college, got into university like nothing ever happened.
Yeah.
Learnt how to study a little bit, sort of didn't really enjoy what you were first studying, but then found kind of a bit of a passion in law. So you've gotten through that, and then finish your degrees, obviously.
Yeah.
And then bang, you go into the market and you get $100,000 job straight away.
Not first time round. In fact,
okay.
Now 32 and still haven't nailed that. But no, absolutely not. You think about uni, we had, and commerce is a classic example. I think we had 13,000 people graduate that year, and we're all going for jobs in Perth. It's never going to happen. So no wonder we end up scattered all over the world and all over different industries. You might walk out and we happen to be in a boom time. There's lots of jobs around, but they're probably not in the field that you thought you'd be in. So
correct.
So I worked, I think 3 casual jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And the best one that I earned the most money on, I just thought it was amazing, was I was a swimming teacher and I earned $24 an hour.
Wow.
And I just thought, this is money for jam. So, and I had, when I was at uni as well, they said my parents earned too much for me to get any allowance. But I was like, that's fine, but they're not giving it to me. So,
it's like, not your money. Like,
yeah.
Funny how you get judged by your parents.
Yeah. So, I learnt during uni what it is to hustle just to get by. Absolutely. And I see it now with kids. I think they walk out of high school into my office and think, particularly up in the mining region.
Oh, yeah.
They think they're going to walk into a, 90 bucks an hour as a untrained, unskilled person, and you just think, oh wow, we've got some work to do.
Yeah. And not only that, they can arrive at 9:30, have their half an hour latte, have their 2 hour lunch break, and leave at 4:30 as well.
Yes, and I also get I got one the other day. My staff work a 5-day week.
Yeah.
Typically a 7.6-hour day.
Yeah.
Occasionally we'll ask a bit of overtime to pump a job out. And the other day I got asked if I would consider RDOs. And I thought, which for those listening is a rostered day off. So it's a day that you get paid to go and do whatever you want and not work, which is fairly typical for companies like Rio Tinto when you work 7 days and then another 5 days or 6 days. So you do a 13-day fortnight and then you might get a rostered day off. But I'm not a multi-billion-dollar company, and you're only working 5 days and 8 hours a day. And
Correct.
I just thought, why do you need another day off? So yeah, I see it a lot, and I just think, man, I've got a couple of my staff are just turning 18 as well, my apprentices, and they get the attitude that work revolves around their life, not the other way around. And so, have a bit of a big weekend, comes to Monday morning, oh no, I'm really tired. That's not how that works. Your age, I'd get to work and have a nap at lunchtime and get on with it.
Absolutely, and that's just the key. That's a key insight. There's a couple of things. There's a couple of big insights out of that that you were mentioning as well. Just that hustling in university to get through. I think that really helps when you're in, starting your own business, and literally it's everything you're doing is not working, and you got to somehow get money in the door and getting all that sort of stuff. But the other thing too is, and it was the same with me. So I had the privilege of working at an accounting firm when I got out of university. Now, just on that, I didn't have to do I had a casual job. I actually had a casual job. Actually, that reminds me. I had a casual job for about 1.5 years after having that accounting job, because back then I think they were paying about $30,000 a year or something, which wasn't a lot of money out of 5 years of university. So I still had to maintain that casual job. But it's an accounting firm. It's not, you don't rock up at 9 and you would work back late every day. And at the time it's quite hard. But I think that's a valued lesson that I learned at the start of my career, was that, the hours were kind of expected from the start. And you had to, when there was a project on, you have to stay back till it's done. It's not, yes, they'll give you some leeway on other days and stuff like that, but there's always that expectation that you need to get things done, and you're hired by an employer not to give you a job. You're hired, they're going to give you some training, 100%. You're going to learn some life skills, and it betters the whole society by you doing that. But fundamentally, you're there to do a job, and you have to get that job done. No one's being a bully telling you to do your job. Sometimes if you're going to do an extra half an hour, yes, if you've got an event or something, just communicate. But you've got to learn how to do that. Like that's a critical thing. Like, you've got to get that work done. You're there to learn. You're not going to know a lot when you start working. It's a training process. It takes 3, 4, 5 years to actually become value adding, I would say, to some point as well.
Yeah, and that's a perfect. And I sat my apprentices down recently, and I said to them, what I need you all to understand is that right now you aren't worth anything to me. And I was like, that sounds so harsh, but you can't sign off on anything. You don't have the skill set yet. You're learning, and I'm really excited to have you on board, but I'm not doing you're not doing me a favor by being here. I pay you every day. I'm doing you the favor by taking a chance on you, and I need you to work really hard for that. So it is, and it's particularly the generation below me that just seems to have changed. When I was their age, I was so grateful to have a job, because I understood that it was someone taking a chance on me because I didn't know what the heck I was doing.
Absolutely.
So I think that we need to, work out what it is in our culture that has shifted that mindset and shift it back, because it's a concern.
It is. It's an absolute concern for me as well, and I see it now as well. And there's just that expectation of everyone's going to walk in, and I think part of it too is the cost of living is just gone ridiculously high now, which is impacting people. There are some negative impacts in society. A lot of younger people may struggle to buy a home. That was always the Australian dream when I was, being born. Just to be clear on that too, I have bought my own home. I am 40 years old and I bought it when I was about 39. So it does take time is the thing. You're not going to necessarily have your first home by, being 18 or 19 is kind of the point there as well. So that's the kind of thing that I'd like to emphasize to people. There is a bit of hard work at the start. You've got to get things done, but it will eventually pay out. Now, can we circle back onto one thing? So when you were doing some casual, so you finished uni, hard to get a job, you're in a mining downturn. I actually, interestingly enough, the global financial crisis? I got my job 6 months before that, so I just missed that. Mind you, it took a year to find that job.
Yeah, well, so that hit in 2008.
Yeah.
That was the year I left high school in 2007.
Yeah.
So while I was at uni, we were in the GFC, hoping that it started to pick up by the time, but unfortunately WA was a little bit different because the iron ore price dropped as soon as I graduated. So we saw in WA we saw the highest number of bankruptcies ever in Australian history in a 1 year period. Yeah. So it was a tough time to try and enter a workforce with 13,000 other people.
Yeah, definitely, especially in a downturn, and everyone's highly educated as well. That's the other thing as well. You're competing with a very high bar there as well. On that, so you came out, did some casual work, all that, but then you end up working with your brother.
Yes. Yeah.
What were the first years of work like? Because did you find it, were you a bit of a duck to water when it came to work? Or were there some really high sort of mental sort of barriers you had to get through as well to actually sort of get that work done as well?
Two things. One, he wanted me to do the books, and we know how I am with accounting. So it was a real struggle for me. So I was watching webinars and going on YouTube and trying to teach myself. I even booked myself into MyOb courses, all sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to go and teach myself because the other option was failing. So that was one thing. The other thing was it was really boring and it brought me no joy, and I had to get okay with that and recognize that this isn't forever, but this is the situation I'm in. And I find that a lot now. I see it with my team. Sometimes you can tell they're working on specific jobs that aren't sparking joy, and then they want to throw the towel in. I'm just like, it's one job for a much bigger picture. So, and that's where when I would have been in my early 20s then, and I was so bored, and I didn't really want to go to work every day because I knew it was another day of looking at accounting. And I hated it, but I knew that it was an essential skill because, as we know, 80% of the world's CEOs are accountants. So I knew in my heart that was an essential skill, and I knew that I just had to A, learn it, and B, cope with the boredom for the bigger picture. So that was my first sort of 3 years. So it was a bit of a slog.
And that's it. That's a key insight there as well. That was 3 years of doing that for a slog. And not only that, you kind of didn't really know what you were doing. You were looking at courses. You were self-teaching, really. YouTube is like this marvel that we have now that I didn't really have when I was growing up. So I was probably a couple of years behind you in front, where YouTube didn't really come out. But, you know, we've got access to tools and all that to do that. But even with all that access and, you know, you doing extra, there is a period of time, it's quite, you know, it is a baptism of fire a little bit as well. You've got to just muddle through that work and do it for a few years and just learn those skill sets. The first, I guess, not to encourage anyone or any students the first couple of years of working outside of university may not necessarily be the most fruitful period of your career. It may be an absolute uphill battle, and it's a learning curve, and you may be doing a lot of things that are boring. But those skills that you're learning are so valuable later on, because when you pick something up in the future, you just know how it's been done. You know what's involved, and especially running a business as well. Like, I hated accounting in university, and I still hate accounting right now. Just to let you know, I can't stand it. But if you run a business, you gotta be all over your numbers. Like, you know, if you've got not enough coming in the top and you're spending out the back, there's a gap you gotta meet, and that's either you gotta get some money off an investor, or you gotta go to the bank, and the bank says, well, how are you gonna pay me back? So there's a whole raft of skills that you learnt there. And another thing that you mentioned there as well, there's always that there's a concept that I always hear about. It's like, face your fears and you'll overcome them. And I've faced every fear that I've had, and I don't think I've overcome any of them, to be frankly honest with you. But there was a sign I seen someone put up. Sometimes you've got to do it scared. And the way I apply that to that situation is, sometimes you've got to do it even if it's boring as hell, because you know that something bigger is coming as a result of that. So on that, you were there for roughly 3 years doing that, you know, doing the accounting, doing all the books. Then you were trying to change some processes for your brother's business itself. How did that go?
Okay. Right. So, yeah, my brother's a mechatronic engineer and has a very specific way of thinking that that isn't how I think. Yeah. And he lives in this organized chaos, but it's only organized to him. So it was interesting. And, you know, while I'm doing this, I'm picking up things. You know, it's 3 years is a long time to be in one business, and you learn. You pick things up, you go to meetings, you hear people around the office talking about different things, and you start to learn things, and you instinctively know there's a better way to do this, because if something's not working, there must be a better way to do it. Absolutely. So and I tried to change it, but, you know, it was really, my brother and I just couldn't work together on that. We get on fine now, but we still would never work together again.
Yeah.
So that became really frustrating for me. And, you know, being a young woman, I approach a lot of things very differently. I have a lot of empathy, and I crave purpose. I think that's not unique to being a woman, but I do think it's unique to these younger generations. We want to serve a purpose in the world. And I couldn't do it anymore. Because my brother is purely driven, but it wasn't enough for me. So that's where I started looking beyond that.
Yeah, perfect. And on that as well, you were saying that you actually, in order to change some of those processes, you actually went back to school.
Yes. Yeah, so I was sitting there, and I just, I'm like, there's, you know, I ended up, although it was a struggle, I ended up loving uni. I loved learning, and I still love learning now. I'm actually enrolled in another graduate diploma at the moment. I ended up getting into Charles Sturt University over East. So they were one of the first universities to do online learning really, really well. Mm-hmm. And I got into a Master's of Project Management. So I learnt sort of some of the key principles, and that has come through my whole career. And it's not just in how you manage a project, it's how you manage everything in your life, from, so it's a really, I can't say enough good things about project management as a life skill.
Absolutely, and it just goes on to, and is it safe to say that it goes into everything you were doing? Like when you go on a holiday, you plan everything. Absolutely, yeah. You sound like all the project managers I know really well. But just to circle back on that as well, and this is another thing for the whole notion of continuous learning as well. So, like myself, I went to university, finished, and then had to do other postgraduate studies as well. But your learning doesn't really end just because you finish university. You may have to do additional training, and if you change careers, you may need to do additional training again. So don't ever feel bad that you need to go and do some more studying. The only trick with that is when you're an adult and you're going back and doing that, maybe you've got to manage your time. You might still have to, actually feed yourself at that point in time as well. Pay your rent, get your food bill.
That became key.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas when you're living at home with your parents, which for everyone watching this, in Australia, the majority of people that go to university live at home with their parents during that period of time. It's only when they start working full time do they move out. So when you're going back to study, you've got to just plan a little bit better, but it definitely isn't a backward step or anything. It definitely will propel you forward.
Absolutely. And like I said, I'm back at uni now, trying to juggle that with running all my business. Yeah. And it's purely because I really am excited by what I'm studying.
Absolutely. What are you studying right now, out of curiosity?
A graduate diploma in energy and carbon studies.
Energy and carbon. Interesting. Very interesting. Now, on that as well, so when you were saying that you went back, you did some study, then you developed a product.
I didn't develop it. I came across it. Yeah. And it was developed by some scientists here in Perth, some scientists and some refrigeration mechanics, and incredibly intelligent couple of men, but they just didn't have the the charisma to sell it, or they were passionate about it, but they weren't approaching it in a way that people could comprehend. So I was like, maybe if it comes from me, who's a business person as opposed to a refrigeration mechanic, we can sexy it up a bit and get it going. And that's because basically the way I see it, that was pivotal in my career, because it led me to look behind the curtain, and I've never been able to look back. And it was really seeing that, and now I see it every day. There are so many incredible products that we're not using that would save the planet. And frankly, this product I came across will be responsible for saving the planet, I believe, still to this day.
Interesting on that. So I just want to give a little shout out to every entrepreneur coming up. So if you do have a product that you do want to bring to market or something like that, don't necessarily be disheartened if that product itself doesn't necessarily thrive the way you want it to thrive. And there's some key insights from what you were saying as well, that by doing that process, you actually learnt yourself. There are a ton of other products that are out there. You've actually learnt there's a bigger market. Sometimes it's almost better not to try so hard and not get the outcome where you have a big learning. So there is a bigger market out there for other products. But for any entrepreneur coming to the market right now, don't be disheartened by a product that you've got that you're taking to market, or a service or whatever, that's not actually going where you want it to go, even though you're putting in 20, 30, 40, 50 hours a week, and you're not getting paid for any of this stuff either. That's the critical thing about that. There may be some big learnings from that as well. So you've had that insight of there's all these other products out there as a result of that, and any entrepreneur may have that similar insight about something. You'll learn something from trying to take something to market. And the next time you do it, you'll be prepared. You know, you'll have some sort of idea of what it takes, because at the start you're kind of, slinging mud at the wall, trying to see what sticks a little bit, if that makes sense. But once you've done that process once, there are all those learnings that you can get from that.
And I think one thing I still see is, and I think it's very big in Australia, is people want to hold their IP and their ideas really close to their chest because they don't want anyone to steal them. The problem is that is no one ever finds out about them either. So
Yeah.
There are ways to protect yourself and that sort of thing. But if you truly believe what you're offering is special and unique, you should be able to share it. And I think that particularly if what you're doing is, if you believe the world needs your product, you probably don't want to hold it too close to your chest.
Get it out there.
That's an interesting insight. And can I give you one more thing on that as well? Like, if it's such a good product, there's always going to be competition to it, right? By you not getting it out there, it means that you've got to lead into the market and you can run that market. And a classic example is when Steve Jobs bought out the iPhone, for example, right? There was a ton of competitors that came after. Samsung came, Oppo came, they all came to the market subsequently. But who has the $1 trillion company? You know what I mean? Just because you've got a great idea and you're scared that people will copy, I say get it out there. You've got to share your ideas. It's, you've got that idea for a reason. You can add value to someone's life. And just because people copy it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to diminish your product. Like, a Samsung doesn't diminish an iPhone. Like, iPhone hasn't gone under. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
That rivalry may make your product even better as well.
Absolutely. I think about that all the time. I love competitors because it makes me need to be better, makes me need to be innovative, and it makes me need to sharpen my pencil. And I think it's a really good, it's a fantastic thing. You learn a lot from it.
And the other thing too is sometimes, anyway, during that process, sometimes when a competitor does come out and they do punch you, straight in the stomach, it's probably the punch that you needed to get better as well. Like, you notice that when you've had a bad project go bad, it's like, well, that's never going to happen again because that was so painful. And even throughout my business career as well, we've had projects that I think you can tell who are the true entrepreneurs within a business. I've had projects where they've gone extremely badly and the CEOs will just sit down and go, okay, so what went wrong? How are you going to mitigate it in the future? And they don't necessarily go at you for it, whereas bad ones will just rip your head off for everything, and those probably aren't the best places to work, to be frankly honest. And those better CEOs, I've actually had lunch with a couple of them, and they say the fundamental thing that they say these simple things that I'm like, why didn't I think of that? It's like, I don't care if people make mistakes. I just don't want to make the same mistake twice.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that they always say is, because we as an employer here as well, we don't want to disappoint people as well. I remember during the pandemic recently, actually, I remember the boss I used to work for at the time, he said, hey, look, we probably got this competitor coming and this market force is causing all this. And then he turned around to me and goes, there's nothing I can do about any of those, so I'm just not going to worry about it. And I'm like, that's probably a pretty good attitude, where I'm freaking out thinking how we're going to pay bills and all this sort of stuff. But there is a point where you do have to, you got to learn from your mistakes, but there are certain things you may be worrying about you have no control about, and there's no point in worrying about those either.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a big, one thing I've learned in business, and you'd be the same, is analyzing risk in all levels of business. Analyzing risk and mitigating it, and recognizing what you can and can't control is key, because you may say, I can't control my competitors coming in, I can't control what they're going to offer, but I can absolutely control what I offer. And
absolutely.
And it's just, don't worry. And I have all the time, a lot of people, I'm the only female business owner in the energy space where I live. And the men are very worried about that. They're very always watching me.
Good. Let them be
worrying
worried.
about what I'm doing. And as long as they're worrying about what I'm doing, they're not working on their own.
Perfect.
So
yeah.
it's love that.
You know what? What's that saying? Winners focus on winning, and losers focus on winners, or something like that.
Absolutely, and I've seen it be their downfall. Absolutely, and I see it in that they copy marketing campaigns and stuff like that. And I'm like, what a bizarre! Rather than coming up with their own solution,
they just copy everything you do.
Yeah. Which is good. It's a fantastic thing. And the other thing about competitors is if someone's looking for that solution, they're always going to see what else is on the market. So actually, if your competitors are marketing, it's bringing people to you as well. So I always, I like it when my competitors market because it's free marketing for me.
Use your competitors' marketing, and then let them exhaust all their dollars to see what works, and then take what works and just make it unique to yourself. And then they've already done the market testing for you, so you can absolutely milk other people's marketing dollars as well, which I think is an absolute brilliant idea. And especially when you're starting a business, you have no money. Like it's
even when you're well into the business, you still might have no money.
Have a look at, and this is off tangent a little bit, but look at businesses like Uber. Like Uber still makes a loss.
I also think, back to that conversation on marketing and money. Look at Clana. Clana is a perfect example where they raised a lot of money, fantastic, but then they spent 60 million on marketing and only got 3 million in the door in sales. And so you just think, like you say, let your competitors exhaust it. Let's learn from Clana. What did they do wrong?
Yeah, exactly. Get the case study out.
And this is also why accounting is really handy because, if you were managing that appropriately, you would have picked up that discrepancy a lot earlier.
Now, just on that, so the viewer may not know, and we're kind of running toward, we've got about 10 minutes left, 10, 12 minutes. Do you want to just give everyone just a quick rundown on what Clana is?
Clana is a competitor of Afterpay, right?
Yeah.
And they're, I think they're Swedish or something. They're from Europe, but their Australian office, I think, basically went under in a day because their financial reports came out and they realized that they had $100 million in the bank, but they spent, I think it was 60 to 70 million on marketing, and that only raised 3 million in revenue. And so that's inefficiency at its core. Like that's a real concern.
And just to circle back on a single point as well, not all those people that think that they're stupid in high school, I can tell you right now, those people at Clana would have been the smartest guys in the room, or the smartest guys in the room, or the investors would have been the smartest guys in the room. So just because you think you're stupid and someone else is smart, trust me, that doesn't stop people from making a lot of mistakes in the future.
I see it every day. A lot of people who, have invested a lot of money into things, and it was just people that could talk the talk.
The tech bubble taught us that one in 2000. Might have been just before your time, but the tech bubble taught us that, where you had valuations for companies that were just skyrocketing, and it was just a terrible thing. Just to finish up on this movie, we've got about 10 minutes left. I want to actually have a little chat about your business itself. Cheetah, if I pronounce that correctly.
Cheeditha Energy.
Cheeditha Energy. My apologies. Cheeditha Energy. And I actually want to draw your attention to a couple of the comments on that. And I found this absolutely staggering. I thought we were in 1983 or something on that article that you were in the Financial Review on. This is how, obviously, I found you. But there were some key comments on there. I can't seem to pull the article up for a second, but I'll get it up for the video, the edit. But there were some statements that you were saying that you'd walk into a boardroom as the CEO of the company, and they would be like, "Oh, when's your manager gonna come?" What was that like? That this is the kind of challenges. These are just stupid. Like, personally, I think that is just dumb. But these are the kind of challenges that that exist, and you face them. And how did you tackle that? Do you want to just give us a bit of insight on that?
Yeah, and I'll just let you know, I started my business when I was 26. So I was young and I was female and I was in a male dominated industry and town, because I'm from the north of WA. And so it, it had all the recipes for that to occur. But yeah, on Monday, I was asked to do 2 pitches to a board based on 2 new companies I've started. And they're looking to invest. And I was sitting in the room and someone came in late, and he went around the room and he shook the hand of every single person there except me. And they were all men except me. And he made a point of not even acknowledging me. And he'd be in his mid-40s, so there's no excuse there in terms of...
He's a borderline millennial, you know what I mean? Like, that's ridiculous.
So it's just like, wow, we're still here. All right. And then I got up and gave my presentation. He was like, oh. Whoops. I'm not the scribe.
God.
So, it's really challenging, and it not so much now, because my skin's gotten a lot thicker, but I used to leave meetings, sit in the car and cry, because I just felt like I was bashing my head against the wall, and that, how is anyone ever going to take me seriously? But failure wasn't an option. And so that was really what drove me to realize I just had to be the smartest person in the room. And it's still the case today, as we've seen, because I'm still considered young in all these boardrooms that I stand in. I speak at a lot of conferences. The first conference I spoke at, I was the youngest person speaking by 20 years. And I just thought, what am I doing here? Why do they want to hear from me? I don't have the expertise or, the experience to be doing this. And I watched speaker after speaker, and it was so boring and stodgy and just lacked any sort of luster. I was just like, oh, no wonder our industries aren't changing at the rate they need to, because this is what we've got to look up to. And so it really got me. I gave myself permission to be exactly who I thought I should be, and that's what I see it as a benefit, because they don't see me coming, which is so I'm in the best position to surprise everyone, because they think so low.
There's so much to take away from that, and that interesting comment that you said about just being the smartest person there, that was actually in your article as well, that you mentioned that you were going to boardrooms, they wouldn't take you seriously, so you went out and said, you know what, fuck everyone. I might have to beep that word out, but I'm going to go and learn everything. And you were saying that you were able to control the rooms as well. You go in there, control the rooms, and you command respect by doing that. So for anyone, whatever your age, ethnicity, whatever it is, there is no shortcut for hard work. Like, you went out there and you actually learned everything. You went in there, you were crying in your fucking car, for Christ's sake. But from that, you put an action plan together, you walked in and you just did what you needed to do. So that hard work always pays off. And at every stage in your life, you're going to have that crying in your car moment. God, I don't know how many projects that haven't gone well, and you're just like, oh my God, do I have to present this? But, you learn from those, you get on that. Not everyone's going to be friendly and nice to you your whole life, but you can always command everyone's respect by doing just the simple things that you do. And there's an interesting thing that you mentioned there as well, and a previous person I interviewed actually mentioned that as well. A little bit of imposter syndrome there as well. You said you gave yourself permission. You're probably there because you deserve it, but world's hardest critic on yourself.
Yeah.
you're like, oh, why am I here? These guys are 20 years old, but they're boring and they're old and no one wants to talk to them. But everyone's got a bit of that imposter syndrome as well.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so that is a key insight. Now, mindful that we've only got 5 minutes left, and I want to be respectful of your time. Why don't you take us through what you guys do over at Cheeditha Energy? And tell us a little bit about it as well, because it's a very, very, very interesting concept. The whole thing, the way that you've set it up as well.
So how it came about was I started in this solar space as a result of struggling with the refrigerant gas. But I worked where I live. The Aboriginal people are still deeply connected to country and culture. So it's a really special place to live, where you can have incredible experiences if you put the time and effort into gaining the trust and respect of the Aboriginal people. And my mum was running an art centre out at one of these communities, Cheeditha community, and I would go out and just spend time with them. And one day the senior elder came to me and said that he's petrified of what the future looks like for his people, and that's to do with A, mining, B, a lack of wealth within Aboriginal communities, and without wealth they can't continue their culture because it dies out. And so he said, what can we do together to build a business together? And I said, well, why don't we start this energy business together? And that's where it really started. And I have a business partnership with the community. So there's over 100 people that live in that community, from children to senior elders. They teach me so much about resilience. But the biggest thing I've learned from them is not thinking in a project life cycle. And that is, a project life cycle is, let's call it 25 years that a solar farm might exist.
Mm-hmm.
Aboriginal people think in generations. They think, what's here in 300 years? What's here in 3,000 years? And it really got me to think, we're trying to solve this carbon problem like white people. And it is, all right, well, let's quickly put as many solar farms in as we can without considering what the impact that has on A, the biodiversity, B, the land that's there afterwards, C, what we do with the solar panels once they're done. And, it's not just solar, it's everything in this green transition. And that's really has informed me to be the leader that I am, because all of a sudden now I'm really thinking in generations. I don't think about my career as a 30-year, 40-year career. I think of it as, what legacy am I setting, a standard am I setting, and legacy that I'm leaving. So that's what Cheeditha Energy has taught me, and it's grown to be the biggest rooftop solar company in regional Western Australia.
Perfect. And in terms of the Indigenous community itself, we will wrap up pretty soon. What do you employ directly within the regional community itself? The Indigenous community, sorry?
My mob, so the elders work at a board level.
Yeah.
My mob, they don't want to work in energy. Yep. So what I've actually recently developed with some new business partners is we're getting into the native seed space, growing seedlings for Clana. That's really more of a, they're really excited by that, because they're going to be working the land and really working on healing country. So we've managed to find projects that really suit the way they want to live, and also protect their culture.
Perfect. That's interesting, and that's amazing what you've been able to create there from absolutely nothing. And you've seen a need there, and you've worked with the Indigenous community. Actually, this is the kind of economic development that actually lifts people out of poverty, and it enriches people. It doesn't just enrich people, but it empowers them as well. Bridgette, I'm so grateful for your time. Do you want to let everyone know how they can get in contact with Cheeditha Energy? I'll also email you with all your details, and we'll put a link at the bottom of this video with how they want to get in touch with you if they want to do a solar project or anything like that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably the easiest way is my new email for one of my new businesses is Bridgette@powerhouse.earth, and you can put that link in there. I love connecting with people. It's actually what has made my business what it is today, and found the opportunities. I'm a huge believer in if you can see her, you can be her. And I really want that for the generations below me. You need to see people achieving these things in order for you to believe you can do it. So feel free to reach out to me directly or through any of my websites is fine as well.
Perfect. But what we'll do for everyone who's watching this is I'll get all of Bridgette's details and we'll put them at the bottom of this video. And you can click on any of the links and check out all the great stuff that she's working on. Bridgette, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate everything that you've done. Thank you for coming on. You're my third guest on the podcast, so hopefully we'll get some more. And is there any other final messages you'd like to leave on?
I think that something I said the other day, and it really resonated with myself, is as long as your purpose in what you're doing is greater than your self detrimenting thoughts, you'll succeed. So we've all got them, but as long as you know why you're here, you're gonna be able to overcome anything.
Awesome. Well, that's a great note to finish this meeting up on. Bridgette, thank you so much for your time, and I wish you guys the best of luck with Cheeditha Energy and all your other ventures, and especially that stuff you're helping out with remote communities as well. It's a great thing. Thank you so much.
No worries at all. Thank you.
Cheers. Hey guys, I hope that interview with Bridgette was insightful for you and it gave you some tips on what you can do in your career. Now, if you're preparing for a job interview or you're starting to look for jobs, check out the link below. It's my free course on what you can do to prepare for a job interview and the things you need to do before you apply for any jobs. We go through things like your fashion and your hygiene. Now, it's pass or fail, but there are some pitfalls that you need to avoid. Your social media profiles, the settings you need to have on your social media profiles before you apply for any job. We also go through the top questions you're likely to be asked for a job interview and how to prepare for them. Also, the questions you should be asking in a job interview, and most importantly, what can you do if you're not confident before an interview? We discuss some exercises that you can do just before the interview. So if you want access to all of that, check out the link below. Like always, best of luck with your career and whatever path you want to go down to, and I hope you land the job of your dreams.